In war, guns, aeroplanes, tanks are very important, but the soldiers who command them are more important. That's why your army must be trouble-free. Soldiers must be willing to fight and feel peaceful. Soldiers whose psychology is not in good condition and who have bad relations with their commanders cannot fight. They jeopardize the soldiers with them and cannot help the country in the war. This situation is happening in the Russian army. Russian soldiers do not trust their commanders and do not fulfill their orders. For this reason, the Ukrainian army can take back those regions with counterattack operations before Russia can establish dominance on the fronts it controls. An example of this is actually happening in the Bakhmut region. The Russian army dreams of completely clearing the Bakhmut region, which it has been targeting since the beginning of the war, and reaching Kiev in that region, but it cannot achieve this. The Ukrainian army continues to achieve successes on the Bakhmut front line. This situation causes unrest in the Russian army, because despite all their efforts, the Russian army cannot completely repel Ukraine from this region. Thousands of Russian soldiers and thousands of Wagner soldiers were killed in this region. In this region, many Russian detachments are on the verge of extinction. Soldiers on other fronts are also talking about the unfavorable situation in Bakhmut and are worried about this situation. Russia's failure in and around that area is demoralizing Russian soldiers on all fronts. When the Russian General Staff wants to redirect some troops from different fronts to the Bakhmut region, Russian soldiers oppose this decision. This situation is a disaster for an army. Soldiers who do not obey orders, soldiers who are not in good terms with their commanders, can lead a country to disaster. When Russia was most effective in the Bakhmut region and gained control over a large part of the region, there were Wagner soldiers on the Bakhmut front. The Russian army and Wagner mercenary groups acting together controlled a large part of the Bakhmut region. But there were also disputes between the Wagner troops and the Russian troops. Russian and Wagner troops did not get along well. In addition, the Wagner leader Prigozhin was at odds with Russian government. Prigozhin's problems with Gerasimov and Shoigu also affected the Wagner and Russian troops. And as a result of these problems, the Ukrainian army completely neutralized the Wagner forces in Bakhmut. Thousands of Wagner members and Russian soldiers lost their lives. One of the reasons for Russia's inability to completely control the Bakhmut region is the failure of the soldiers to obey the orders of the commanders. There is a big disagreement between soldiers and commanders in the Russian army. In our recent report, we reported that a Russian soldier killed his commander with a machine gun in the Russian barracks. With such big problems, it is very difficult to completely capture a region like Bakhmut, where Ukraine's defenses are very strong. The active defense strategy implemented by the Ukrainian army after the Russian troops controlled most of the Bakhmut region yielded results. Continuing to implement this strategy, the Ukrainian army carried out counterattack operations against the Russian troops in the region and prevented Bakhmut from being completely under the control of Russia. In the south of Bakhmut city center, Klishivka and Andriivka came under the control of Ukraine, which gave Ukraine a great advantage. Russian troops suffered many casualties during the clashes in this region. Clashes continue in the city center of Bakhmut. The Ukrainian army's counterattacks on strategic points have worn out the Russian troops. Ukrainian troops put pressure on the roads supplying the city center for the Russians, leaving the Russian troops in a desperate situation. The Russians are directing their troops to this region in order to retake the Klishivka and Andriivka regions controlled by Ukraine. It was confirmed that a large number of troops were dispatched to the region. It was also reported that some Russian soldiers refused to attack Ukrainian positions in this region. Some soldiers who laid down their weapons in the region reported to the commanders that they refused to fight by disobeying orders. The unbelievable incident in the Russian army confirms the problems between soldiers and commanders. Russian commanders cannot even convince the soldiers to fight against Ukrainian troops on the front line. It remains to be seen how the Kremlin will solve such problems at the front. There are also some commanders who believe that Putin's strategy is not correct. While the soldiers do not fulfill the orders of the commanders, some commanders question Putin's decisions. The fierce Ukrainian offensives in and around Bakhmut are also influential in the decisions of the soldiers. The death of many Russian soldiers in the long-standing clashes in the region makes the remaining Russian soldiers uneasy about going to this region. These are the developments in the Bakhmut region. Ukraine's pressure continues in Crimea, another critical region. Ukraine is taking decisive and bold steps to reclaim this strategic region annexed by Russia in 2014. The recent large-scale drone strikes carried out by Ukraine in Crimea and the Black Sea, Kyiv claims, have dealt a significant blows to the Russian military presence in the occupied peninsula. The Russian Defense Ministry announced that Ukraine shot down 19 drones during these attacks and that explosions occurred in various areas in Crimea. However, Russian social media channels and eyewitnesses tell a different story. The explosions heard in the videos and the sounds of the drones hitting the targets confirm the Ukrainian attacks. Kiev has announced that Russian soldiers were killed and military equipment destroyed in an attack on the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters near Sevastopol. The Ukrainian Security Service announced that this attack was carried out jointly by the Ukrainian Air Force and Navy, and that Russian generals had chosen this base as a backup command center to protect their main deployment. The attacks in Crimea were not limited to these. The Ukrainian Security Service and Navy carried out another very special attack in Crimea last night. Ukraine targeted Russia's Saki air base. The details of the operation show that Ukrainian special services used UAVs to overcome Russian air defense systems and then fired Neptune missiles. This bold move was carried out against at least 24 fighter jets and important military equipment, such as Su-30s, Su-24s, Su-12s, and the Panzer air defense missile system based at Saki airfield. Saki airfield was also used as a training base for Mohajer UAV operators. These UAVs are deployed by the Russians to coordinate airstrikes or to be used as strike drones. Sources emphasize that this successful operation by the SSU and the Navy hit its targets and caused serious damage to Russian military equipment. It is known that Ukraine has carried out successful attacks against Crimea in recent weeks. In particular, missile strikes on September 13th seriously damaged the Rapucha-class ship Minsk and the Kilo-class submarine Rostov-on-Don in Sevastopol. Russia's S-400 surface-to-air missile systems in Crimea were also allegedly targeted. What do you think about these developments? Have you assessed the counterattacks in the Bakhmut region of Ukraine and the unwillingness of Russian troops to fight? Will the strong active defense strategy of the Ukrainian army in Bakhmut and Crimea be enough to completely repel Russia from these regions? You can share your thoughts with us by commenting.